What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we're going to be talking about the evolution of movement speed in Call of Duty, at least in recent years. And the reason I decided I wanted to cover this topic is I've noticed with Call of Duty Vanguard, it seems like people are moving faster than ever before in Call of Duty. And I just wanted to see if this is in fact true, and then toward the end of the video, I wanted to share my opinion on this, as well as my opinion on tac sprint, and whether or not I feel tac sprint is good and healthy for Call of Duty. Now, of course, that part is going to be quite subjective, so let's first hop into the data and the actual facts. So what I did is I looked at the movement speeds starting from CoD World War II onward. I didn't want to include jetpack CoDs in this because your sprint movement speeds, for instance, aren't nearly as relevant when you're flying through the air. And then when it comes to older Call of Duty games, I simply don't have them readily available to be doing testing on them, so that's why I started with CoD World War II onward. And I also just focused on SMG and assault rifle movement speeds, just because these are by far the most popular classes of weapons to be using, and I didn't want to overcomplicate this with way too much information overload. So without further ado, let's just hop right into it, and we'll start it off with our base movement speed. So this is moving as fast as you can while standing without sprinting. And as you can see here, there really isn't a massive discrepancy at all over the past 5 Call of Duty games. Sure, it has been trending a little bit upward over time, so like World War II is the slowest with both SMGs as well as assault rifles, but it's not by a massive degree. These are all very comparable when it comes to our base movement speeds. Next up, I want to have a look at our standard sprint speed. So this doesn't include tac sprint with Modern Warfare and Vanguard. We're just looking at the standard sprint speed here. And it is worth noting, every one of these Call of Duty games does have unlimited standard sprint. And this is where we start to see a bit more of a discrepancy. Once again, World War II is the slowest for both SMGs and assault rifles. And with Modern Warfare 2019, this is a bit slower than the recent Treyarch games, Black Ops 4 and Cold War, and also Vanguard is pretty much on par with Black Ops 4 and Cold War with its standard sprint, even though with Vanguard we also have tac sprint available on top of the standard sprint. So I did find that to be quite interesting. I expected Vanguard's standard sprint speed to be noticeably slower than Black Ops 4 and Cold War, and that's just not the case. So now let's move on to what it looks like with the fastest possible sprint speed in each one of these Call of Duty games. So essentially, I'm just adding tac sprint in when it's available, so in Modern Warfare as well as Vanguard. And as you can see there, with SMGs, Vanguard is now way above the games that don't have tac sprint, and it's still noticeably above where Modern Warfare is at with its tac sprint with SMGs. Whereas with assault rifles, they're a lot more even with each other, although Vanguard is still a little bit faster than Modern Warfare on average. And both of these are, again, head and shoulders above the other Call of Duty games that don't have tac sprint. And honestly, that part isn't overly surprising. Of course, you're moving faster while tac sprinting compared to older games where we just had regular sprint. And of course, it is worth noting that this tac sprint doesn't last forever. It is limited. You only get it for 4 seconds at a time, or 8 seconds with double time equipped. So while this doesn't accurately represent your movement speed getting around the map on average, it does show the potential of these movement speeds and how they could impact specific situations. Like for instance, if an enemy is moving from one piece of cover to another, your window of opportunity to shoot that player that's tac sprinting versus somebody that's just using regular sprint from older Call of Duty games is going to be much shorter. Or on the flip side of that, when we have a look at Peeker's advantage, if an enemy tac sprints around a corner to challenge you, they're going to have a much bigger advantage in Vanguard and Modern Warfare due to Peeker's advantage, because they're able to do that noticeably faster than previous Call of Duty games. So this is why, even though our tac sprint is limited to just a 4-second window, it can potentially impact a lot of individual situations. But just to balance things out a little bit better and kind of keep it more of a fair comparison across the board, what I decided to do for the last set of graphs here is for Modern Warfare as well as Vanguard, I just averaged the standard sprint speeds with the tactical sprint speeds to give us a bit more of a realistic representation of how quickly people are generally getting around the map. And as we can see here, with SMGs, Vanguard is still clearly above all of the other Call of Duty games over the past 5 years. And with assault rifles, both Modern Warfare and Vanguard are still noticeably above the rest. And that right there is going to wrap it up for the factual section of this video. That's the data. You guys can see that for yourself. Now let's get into my opinions on all of this and my opinions on tac sprint as well. For me personally, even though I'm somebody that tends to play on the aggressive side, I like being aggressive, I like my Call of Duty games to be more fast-paced, I can't help but think that things have started to get a bit out of control, especially in Vanguard. And I do have several reasons for this. One reason I've already sort of highlighted here, and that is Peeker's advantage. The faster the movement speed is, the more pronounced Peeker's advantage is going to be, and therefore the more likely you are to see objectively unfair situations where one player is seeing the other player noticeably before the other player is able to see them, through no fault of their own, by the way, and that does create issues in certain situations. Now, this is something you can adapt your playstyle to, and I personally have, by slide canceling or jump shotting around a corner combined with this tack movement speed to carry that momentum around. But in my opinion, that sort of devolves the gameplay into who can exploit this mechanic the hardest, which is generally not the best way to be balancing a game, in my opinion. Additionally, just in general, with this really fast tack sprint movement speed, I feel it can be harder to track moving targets, especially for the lower skilled players out there. And I totally get it. When it comes to that does simply come down to a skill gap, and you've got to learn to be able to improve your aim to track those targets. But at the same time, I do think there is a certain threshold where it can get a little too ridiculous. For previous Call of Duty games, I don't think any of them have really quite reached that. But I do feel, with Vanguard especially, it has passed that threshold, and I do feel like the tack sprint movement speed has gotten a bit out of control. So finally, I did want to talk a little bit about my general opinions on tack sprint. I do have a lot of people ask this question to me when I'm live streaming on Twitch, which, by the way, if you guys haven't followed me there, I will leave a link down below. But do I like tack sprint? And if it were up to me, would I include tack sprint in the next Call of Duty game, for instance? And when it comes to this, I'm not necessarily fully opposed to having tack sprint in the game. I could honestly take it or leave it, and I don't feel like it significantly impacts my enjoyment of the game. But if it were up to me, I think I would get rid of tack sprint. I kind of prefer just the standard, you're either sprinting or you're not sprinting. Then you only have one type of sprint out time to be worrying about. It makes it so much more difficult to exploit Peeker's advantage in that case. And it quite simply saves controllers. As somebody that's a controller player, tack sprint, especially when you have slide canceling involved, that can be very hard on your hands and your controller. And then finally, by keeping things simple without tack sprint involved, I find it just keeps things a little bit more controlled, a little bit more grounded, and also it keeps things more accessible to the average casual player out there. And that really is important for a franchise like Call of Duty. I absolutely like a certain level of skill gap, and I'm often pushing for things that increase the skill gap in Call of Duty. But when it comes to the basics of just sprinting around the map, I personally feel it's best when it's just kept simple with one standard sprint speed. Now, in my perfect world, if we were to get rid of the tactical sprint feature, I wouldn't be opposed to them bumping up the standard sprint speed a little bit just to sort of find that average and to keep things moving and keep people encouraged to be mobile. I just personally think the gameplay is better off when it's kept a bit more simple in this area. Now, I do expect this is going to be unpopular with a lot of you, and this is where I want to hear from you guys in the comment section down below. First up, what did you guys think about the results that I found with the movement speeds over the past 5 years? Was this surprising to you? Do you think Vanguard's movement speed has gotten a little bit out of control? And then I'd like to hear from you guys, what do you think about tack sprint in Call of Duty? Do you think it's good for Call of Duty? Do you want to see it continue in the future? Or would you rather see them return to a more simplistic, standard sprinting model where you're either sprinting or not sprinting? Just let me know all of those thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.